what I have here, what I'm looking at is some reference photos from the Maui plein air. So from my time in Maui, this is one of those days where it's frustrating because I finished up a painting and then this beautiful sunset started and I didn't have time to set up. You kind of got to be set up before sunset if you're going to paint it on location. So I ran around and snapped a bunch of pictures. And you can see the two reference photos I used for this picture. The picture on the painting on the bottom is an oil painting I did, just kind of experimenting with the oil painting. So it's actually, as you can see, it's a pretty different presentation of the clouds. And I think what's happening here, and so just to fill you in a little bit, the paper I'm using here is a dark, I forget the name of the color. It's pastel matte, but it's a dark blue. I would only use a dark paper, like that dark gray that I used in the last one and the dark blue in this one, if it's a really high contrast, like say a sunset or an evening scene. When I'm doing most of my plein air work, I'm using I think it's cornmeal or maize, like just a creamy yellowish off-white, because I can go in any direction with that. These darker colored papers, they kind of intensify the color, the appearance of the color when you're starting. And so sometimes it can be really hard to see the color. So just, so that's the only cautionary note I would give on using dark paper. It depends on what you want to do with the color. In here, you can see I keep dropping down that headland, that bank there. I had it a little bit higher. I'm like, no, I need to go a little lower. No, I need to go a little lower. So this is an argument for maybe spending a little bit more time in the sketchbook. I probably could have speeded things up for myself if I had done a little bit more in the thumbnails, but I felt like I had that oil painting on the left. And so, I was like, I'll be okay. And now I'm getting into going, I should have sketched this out first. So you can see I'm going to drop this down a little bit more because I want it to be more about the sky. So we could probably maybe skip up to a couple minutes. And then here's another thing. Especially if I'm painting the ocean, I always have a ruler. Because I can't, it's the one place where you need a good straight line is that horizon, where the ocean meets the sky. You don't want to mess that up. So I always have a ruler in there. And then when I was checking there is I want to check the proportions so that I don't, so that in this case, it's 2/3 sky, 1/3 land. I don't want that competition of having almost half land, in this case, 60-40. I want to make sure that, having a clear idea of what this is about, is this about the movement of the water and the surf, or is it about the beauty of that big cloud? In this case, to me, it was about the beauty of that big cloud. So I'm going to give that all the space that it deserves. get a painting done by any means necessary. That's my philosophy. So in this case, I'm like, I'm going to work on the sky for a little bit. So rather than trying to like get down to that horizon to the sea there, I'm just going to put a piece of tape in. It gives me a nice edge. One of the things to think about with the landscape, Monet said, I think it's Monet that said, there are no lines in nature, only forms one against another. And that's a really, really important principle. So if you think about, say, these, like the horizon between where the ocean meets the sky, there's a lot of moisture in that band. So I want that to be, I don't want it to go downhill or uphill or anything, but I don't want it to be a hard line or that will flatten out. So I want to think about an edge, a lighter edge against a slightly darker edge. And same thing with those dark headlands that you see. There's two kind of big prominent pieces of cliffs. I want to think of those as shapes that would, if I went up to them, they disappear behind. They're not. There's no line on them. It's just an edge. It's a dark edge against a light edge. So think about those when you're trying to create space, because lines can really flatten out form. So here I'm just I'm roughing in and putting in a little bit of gray. A lot of, just talking about color in general, when you're beginning a landscape, the way I think about color is I'm just shooting for an average. So I'm looking at as much as I can get the average of the whole form. So it's I don't tend to work too often where I'm like just gonna lay down all these little pieces of color and light and shadow right away. I look for the big pieces, the big idea, the big color, and lay that down. Let me skip a little. And just here I was just trying to figure out what color to put down next. So here I'm putting down, this is a little bit more of that slightly shadowed color. So it's not the lightest color. Let me skip a little bit here. Oh, did I just go backwards? There we go.
Can you talk about the tape real quick? Someone's curious about the tape.
Oh, the tape. So I put the tape down. I want to just have a nice edge between the ocean and the sky. And so I just put the tape down so that I'm not going to pollute the color of the sky with the color of the ocean. And I'll soften that edge, but then I've got a really clear distinction, really clean color in that break. So it's just a way an aid to help me out here. So see that?
Yeah.
So there, towards the left, there's a little bit of the dark paper coming through that I'll have to manage. And then what I'll do is, and I want you to notice this later, at some point, I'll probably run my finger along that edge, because I don't want the pastel to build up a little bit of a ridge there on that where the ocean meets the sky, because it will totally flatten out that form, and that ocean will not disappear into the distance if I do that. So all I'll need to do really at the end is just run my finger along that, soften that edge a little bit. That make sense?
Yeah. And is it masking tape?
It's artist tape is what I'm using, because masking, and masking tape would be fine. You just wouldn't want masking tape to sit on there for a long time because it could get a little residue on there. But that's just artist tape. So part of the reason I picked this color for this demo is you can see in the water. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna let some of the paper come through. I'm gonna. Oops. Keep doing that. Okay, there. Did you guys see that? I just ran my finger along that ocean just to kind of soften that up. So what you're doing is you're going to let a little bit of that. You can even bring your finger down, let a little bit of the light from the sky drop in and into the ocean, so that you soften up that edge. Here, there's moments in painting where I'm like, "Woo, this is a little scary." And this is where a dark paper can be really tricky, because you might want to go a little darker, because wow, that seems a little stark. That turquoise. Are people? You guys can type in questions if you have. Am I missing? I'm not missing questions, am I?
No, I'm monitoring that, so you can
cool.
Go on, and if I see them come through, I'll ask.
Oh, and someone asked, there was a reference to Rothko. Rothko earlier. Rothko was a abstract expressionist artist, kind of a color field painter, they called him, from the 1950s. Little aside, I do a lot of acting on the side in my other life, and I was in a play called Red. And in that play, I played Rothko's assistant. So that was a lot of fun. But so Rothko's an artist I've really looked at. And he's actually an artist, especially if you can see his work in life, in terms of really layering up color and making color sing. He's pretty remarkable. So again, a lot of this is it's really stark color right now. Some of it will get modulated. Some of it will some of it will stay intense like that. Okay, we have a question here. Am I sketching with new pastel or pastel pencil? That right there is the reddish color that I used in the beginning. That was a Conte crayon. Let's see. I'm just looking at a couple. I'm looking at a question here. Oh, okay, someone was talking about using the ruler. Yeah, I always, like, if I'm going to be out painting the ocean, I always have a ruler. In fact, here's a little thing, little pro tip for if you're out painting on location. I actually always have a 6-inch ruler in my kit, and I use it. The only time I can think of that I really use it in the painting is if I'm doing something architectural or like a horizon like that. But I will use it to sight size. So sight sizing is you're holding your arms straight out and you hold that ruler up. I use it on the centimeter side just because they're smaller increments. And I can use it to compare, like, how big is that mountain in the distance in comparison to that bush in the foreground? How wide is that river in comparison to, those trees or that hill? And so it's a great way to just get some really quick comparisons, because one of the things that happens when you're out painting on location is your mind will play tricks on you. Like, you see a mountain and your mind says, that's a big mountain. Because you know that if you walked out across whatever that field is towards that mountain, that it would be a big mountain. So your mind says, that's a big mountain. And so it's easy to paint that mountain too big in relationship to, say, the cottonwood trees in the foreground or the river, or, what you have in the foreground. Same thing in the bends in a river, like say, or a creek. If it's going back and back and back, it's easy to look at those pieces in the back, like a big S curve on a creek, and to see them as bigger than they are, because you know how big that would be if you walked up to it. So using a ruler to say, oh gosh, that little S curve in the creek is, that's only 2 centimeters. My mind said that was, twice as big. So finding those tools to help you out in order so that you paint what you see, not what you know. So let's see. How do you preserve your work? The question there. So if I'm not going to frame it right away, and I want to store it, I can get glycine. Glycine is kind of like wax paper. I can tape it over the pastel, and that will protect it. I will do a light coating of fixative before I frame. I use Lascaux. Here, I'll type it in, because I find that this. I hope I spelled that right. Lascaux fixative. It preserves the pastel pretty well without dulling the color. Some fixatives will dull the color. Let's see. Do you do a lot of mini sketches or notans before working on a large piece? Great question. I am starting to do more and more. I was really inspired by, I actually watched a demo by, again, David Dibble. And he does a lot of these little studies, just different possibilities. And I don't know if he was the one that calls them iterations or if that's something I came up with. It might be him. I do, I'll take, say, a reference like this. If you have a good reference, do 5 or 6 little teeny paintings, that you're only spending 20, 30 minutes on, and play around, and when you're doing them really small like that, you can mess around with, I'm going to flip the cloud, or I'm going to break up the clouds, or you can see on that oil painting on the bottom reference there, I did a very different presentation of the clouds on that one. Okay, so why is your sky colors more green? I'm layering up. I see when you get the sky, you get this broken color that makes the sky shimmer. And one of those colors that is in there is turquoise. And so I'm using a little bit of that, and then I'm layering up some darker, more traditional sky colors. I know on this one, if I did struggle a little bit finding the right darks for the blue sections of the sky. What size are you painting on? What size are you painting here? And when you go out to paint. So this one is a 9x12. I'm going to do a little skipping here, I think. Where are we at? So we can so that we can get through, just kind of keeping track of time. Let's see, sorry, I lost track of the question. When I go out to paint, what sizes? I might, for whatever reason, my go-to size for working outside is 11x14. That's kind of a happy size. I will work anything from 8x10 to 14x18. But a lot of the work I do is 12